Hi, everybody. It's Tim Hagen from Sales and Marketing Management. And today we have another special episode and another returning guest from Dun & Bradstreet. And today's going to be a little bit different. We're going to be talking about a case study, not just theory and concepts, but an actual case study. And so I want to invite our special guest back, Dennis from Dun & Bradstreet. Dennis, how are you?
Good, Tim. Good to see you again. Thanks for having me on your show again.
Cool. Why don't you introduce our guest and your customer?
Sure, absolutely. My name is Dennis Olja. I lead product marketing at Dun & Bradstreet. We empower sales and marketing leaders with the data insights and automation they need for growth. And I'm really excited to have Barry McGee from Citrix on the line with us. He's the director of business intelligence at Citrix. And Citrix is a globally recognized brand. But for those of you that don't know, they create technology that creates simple, secure, and better ways to work from anywhere on any device. They have over 9,000 employees worldwide across 40 countries. I'm really excited to have Barry share his story today. Barry, how are you doing?
Oh, good. Hi, guys. Welcome. Good morning, good afternoon from Dublin.
So, guys, tell us about the project. I'll start with you, Dennis. How did you start engaging with Barry and his team and Citrix? What were some of the challenges? What was the objective of the project? And then we'll turn it over to Gary and have him share from his customer perspective, some of the things that occurred.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Citrix and D&B have a long-standing relationship, and Barry, who leads the practice over in the EMEA market in Europe, really got to talking to us about some of the historical conversion rates that they had been seeing with their sales and marketing team, right? So, as we look at business to business or B2B conversion rates, they are pretty low, typically speaking, right? For every 100 customers, you can average responses typically around 4%. And the marketing baseline is typically even lower, right? Probably less than half of 1%. And Barry was really focused on fixing this inefficiency powered by good data. And their typical sales team was buried with dozens of requests coming from different parts of the business, right? Your sales leader tells you to focus on X. The marketing leader tells you, hey, there's this great campaign or program we're running, focus on that, right? And meanwhile, sales teams are really hustling to hit their quota and their goals, right? So sometimes they can get inundated with asks from across the business. And that's the inefficiency that Barry was looking to solve, right? Where can we create a simple, compelling, clear dashboard that revealed the best targets to go after, informed by good data collected within the business, but also supplemented from outside of the business, right? And that's really how Barry and our team really got to talking. And I'll let Barry talk a little bit more about his perspective.
Barry?
Yeah, so I'll agree with everything that Dennis said, except one thing, which is in a constructive way, it wasn't really about creating dashboards, because what we, as Dennis said, we were faced with how do we basically improve productivity in sales, marketing, and even customer success. What we didn't want to do was just create, here's another super spreadsheet, or whether it's on the cloud or on a laptop, that's what everybody tends to do. And I've had experience of this type of thing in the past. So what we wanted to do was to create, it was really about changing processes and workflow, and not, oh, here's a nice shiny spreadsheet with cool data and it sits in the corner of the business. It had to be front and center of what you did when you came to work on a Monday, or your go-to-market planning, whatever time of the year that's at. So, and like part of the joke with my boss has been is we don't build dashboards. We build business processes to make people more data-driven. It's not about giving people data. It's about transforming how they work. So where D&B came in is they have a component within their product stack which allows us to create workflow, which allowed us to move from beyond from just let's create all these insights, let's run all the data and analytics, and get away from just parking it on a spreadsheet and if they use it, but integrate it into their workflow. We used Salesforce so that I can say, Dennis, here's your prospects, go talk to them, and let's learn from those interactions. And that workflow meant that it moved from just, here's a piece of information about a customer, to, Dennis, did you interact with them? How did that go? And start creating a feedback loop. And again, it's sort of machine learning for organizational transformation, in that you suddenly start to see, well, we think the customers we should talk to are over here. Were we right or not? Was the spreadsheet a good spreadsheet? To use the example. And then you learn and you create a feedback loop for your analytics. And that's what RevUp did insofar as it gave us a feedback loop that otherwise, no matter how good our analytics were, they were just going to be a spreadsheet sitting somewhere that we could never test how it worked in real life.
Yeah, well, I think Barry, you said it. Yeah, I think Barry, you said it best, right? When you said when data sits on a spreadsheet somewhere, it's not really valuable, right? It needs to be integrated into the workflow. Yeah. The days of just relying on data for a competitive advantage are sort of limited, right? Because people are inundated with data. Everyone has access to it. It's about operationalizing that data and integrating it into a workflow for efficiency, right? So, and
there's a whole, even that point, guys, there's a whole behavioral side to it, which we won't go into too much, but there's a tendency to assume that if this data set is better than that data set, that people will act rationally. So there's a good data science model from the PhD data science people and I'll go use it. No, they don't. People behave, emotionally, and they'll work with the stuff they're used to. They'll work with the data sets they're used to. So even if we had a good data set, they still wouldn't use it because they're used to using the spreadsheet they have with inventory or last year's sales that's been sitting on their hard drive for the last 3 years, and they update it all the time. So you need something to challenge that paradigm. You have to change their workflow. You have to stop people from going back to doing it the way they used to. It's not about the data. It's about how you challenge people's biases and how you get them to think differently, think more expansively about what they think they know about their client and what a more complete picture might be of that engagement.
So with that being said, taking what Barry had just shared, Dennis, share a little bit about RevUp and how you went about helping Barry and Citrix start to change some of those paradigm shifts.
Yeah, absolutely, Tim. And again, Dun & Bradstreet comes from a long history of having data as a core competency, right? But as we've evolved in how we execute sales and marketing, and as we've become increasingly reliant on technology to do so, right? A lot of organizations have built out what we call their rev tech stack or their revenue technology stack, right? So you've got your CRM, you've got your marketing automation, you've got your ad platform, right? And we've become increasingly reliant on executing programs and campaigns with those technologies, right? So it's not enough to just have the data and the insights. It's really important for that data, insights, the prioritization to be embedded in those workflows and those systems and really unify the data that is translated among those different technologies and make it consistent, right? And that's why the D&B RevUp ABX solution is grounded in an open CDP, right? A customer data platform that unifies the identity across all of your different technologies and augments it with some of the intelligence that Dun & Bradstreet brings to the table, right? Whether that's firmographic data, whether it's intent or fit data, it's propensity models, right? Being able to merge the customer's first-party data, in this case, Barry's first-party data, with the intelligence from Dun & Bradstreet, and then push those insights embedded in a workflow, as Barry has been mentioning, right? So being able to deliver those insights for sellers to action on in the system that they're sort of living and breathing in, right? They're in Salesforce, for instance, in Barry's
and in fairness, like that was one of the things about the solution that if we didn't have our own internal capabilities, we could have used the D&B out of the box analytics. But because we felt that we knew our data better and we had more sophistication, maybe in-house, we got data sets that maybe D&B didn't have. We said, well, we only use that function. Can we use our own systems instead? And that, I think, for a lot of people, you got to, crawl, walk, run race, as they say, and you need to build up that trust first before you get into the very, very high sophisticated level of analytics deliverables. So the ability to use the workflow component, but with our analytics, helped us bridge that gap. Because if, as a business, and I said, let's trust D&B, we'll use their workflow and their analytics, the resistance would have been probably a little bit too strong. So this was a really useful way to sort of even get the adoption. So we're in the middle of deploying this now globally. So there'll be thousands of Citrites using this all around the world. And the critical piece is we treat our data and analytics, artifacts like product. We take adoption. We look at monthly usage, monthly active usage. Who's using our product? How are they using it? And that ability to play around with how we use the product with Dennis and the team was really critical to drive that adoption in a sort of a soft way.
Yeah, and again, this is the concept of openness, right? So our open platform really allows for that crawl, walk, run evolution, right? As Barry mentioned, a lot of companies are different stages in their journey, right? And whether they're starting new, they can use some of the out-of-the-box capabilities, or as they evolve, if the customer's already got their master, we don't want them to replicate that somewhere else, right? And introduce that complexity. We just want to use the workflow component. In the case of Barry, that's how we deployed it, right? And that open framework really allows us to do that.
And I think both of you have touched on this. I mean, there's certainly some challenges, and you've talked a lot, Barry, about adoption. So I'm going to come back to you, Dennis. What were some of the early challenges, and what were some of the outcomes that you experienced, not from Citrix's perspective, but maybe just D&B's perspective, and then we'll turn it over to Barry.
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to the concept of prioritization and being able to help sales teams focus on their best opportunities, given that they've gotten into a rhythm and inhabit of their day-to-day workflows in some other manner, right? Barry mentioned people are used to their spreadsheet, or people are used to building their list somewhere else. And it's really changing that paradigm, and that mindset informed by good data is something that we continually see, right? Because it's not just a data challenge. It's a organizational culture and focus challenge as well, right? And being able to rely on sort of a new data set that you haven't relied on before, right? Because ultimately, when you're talking about sales, right, you've got a really high pressure job on being able to deliver a quota, right? You got to put food on the table. And it's really important to trust the data that you have. And that's really something that we see as a universal challenge across, all of the customers that we work with. And that's why we typically work on a pilot approach, right? Starting with a small segment, proving out the results, and then broadening from there. And I think that's sort of how we started with Barry and his team as well. And Barry can comment on that.
Yeah, I suppose that in the broad, without getting to the specific challenges, in the broad, what you're really dealing with in organizations like us is that you've got multiple instances of siloed data. You've got marketing data here, sales data there, technology, budget data, and then you've got even different variations of the same data. The value proposition of a CDP, or even of an analytics capability like we built, is to help people make better decisions. But inherent as that is, people tend to think, oh, let's get 20 PhD data scientists and it'll be a super spreadsheet. But it's not that simple, because what you actually do is, when you build a DNA capability or a workflow or a CDP capability, the first thing you actually do is you unearth all the inefficiencies that are already in the system. Everybody knows maybe the data is substandard, and it's like the elephant in the room. The first thing that happens when you do these transformations is you actually look in the mirror and you see for the first time in a quantifiable ways exactly where those bottlenecks and problems were. Oh my God, we've been investing over here in these customers, when in actual fact, the market's over there. Too much of our marketing dollar is here. Too much of our sales sellers here. Oh, the sales territories are disconnected. So what actually happened when we started was we turned on the lights. When we saw, the first thing we saw was, oh, those accounts aren't mine. Well, guess what? They were always there in the wrong place. But when you turned on the CDP component, guess what? You were able to see they were in the wrong place. So this thing of transparency and turning on the lights is a big factor. And that happened everywhere, from marketing leads to, every aspect of the business. Misaligned or poorly distributed sales territories and accounts, sales resources in the wrong place. So you've got to anticipate when you do this, you're going to turn on the lights first. So it's a transformation project first and a data project second. Data is just the cathartic element that gets it off the ground, really.
So last question, this is kind of a loaded question. What were your main targeted objectives, and what were the desired results of what you can share that you actually accomplished? Dennis?
So I think I'm going to let Barry take the lead on this one, but I'll just tee it up for him, right? I think when you look at how Barry's team was executing before versus after, he'll talk a little bit about ad hoc, right, processes that are not grounded in that system of truth and that data layer, and with the workflow efficiencies. And as soon as you turn the lights on and sort of reveal the buyer journey and what's happening across those systems, and really go shift to an integrated process, Barry's team has seen some incredible improvements in conversion rates, in the time to actually generate pipe, the amount of pipe that has been generated, and also the pipeline velocity, right? How quickly that pipeline closes. So I'll let Barry talk a little bit on the specifics there, but it's been quite eye-opening and a fantastic story.
Yeah, so I suppose the tactical one that everyone jumps on is the above the line one. And as Dennis said, in the industry, between sales and marketing, for every 100 clients you engage, whether that's by marketing or sales or cold call or go physically visit, you'd be lucky if 2 or 3 of those turned into a BANT qualified opportunity. We are now averaging at 20%, and that's in between peaks and troughs. But when we double down, we do like a blitz period for, let's say, a couple of weeks or a big push on a certain thing, we're actually hitting 30%. So we've had a 10 to 15x improvement on conversion rates. The bigger impact, though, is that how it affects productivity across the board. Marketing, resource. So the below the line impact is now, instead of the busy being busy paradigm, now everyone's much more effective at what they do. You have a single mechanism that everybody works against instead of people with hundreds of spreadsheets everywhere. That has created a lot more strategic coherence. Everyone is rowing in the same direction. We now plan our go-to-market movements on it. We can see where is the market, how many resources should we have. And that's the bigger picture thing, is we have a single way of interpreting the commercial opportunity ahead of us and how to go and attack that. And that's sort of a less obvious one, because everyone always wants to know, what's the conversion rate? But the bigger picture stuff is we've injected this mechanism into the DNA of the company, and now culturally, we're starting to behave and act in a more data-driven way, as opposed to just, these little sugar hits of a quick list for a call now.
Yeah, think about the stress reduction just in everything that you just said. And I was looking for the term of the cultural transformation. So Dennis, in summary, last thing you'd like to share about, obviously Dun & Bradstreet and certainly your work with Barry.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we've had a fantastic conversation here in terms of Dun & Bradstreet's role in this engagement. Obviously, we've always been grounded in empowering sales, marketing, and operational leaders with better data, but it's growing importance in today's day and age to be able to actually integrate that data in your revenue technology stack and in the workflows that you have. So Dun & Bradstreet has invested incredible amount of resources to build the software capabilities on top of our data and integrate it into some of those best of breed tools, right? Whether you have Eloqua or Marketo or Salesforce or HubSpot, whatever you might have in your stack, the data is delivered consistently across those. And the results are not just conversion rates like Barry mentioned, but it's actually the speed and the efficiency and how you can go to market as well, right? I mean, what we saw with Citrix and with Barry is being able to deliver pipeline in weeks versus months, right? And when you're a seller trying to hit your quota, that speed to market and getting ahead of your competitors is incredibly important. So really thank you a lot, Barry, for sharing your story.
Barry, anything you'd like to add?
What I'd say is, tip to anyone who's working in this data and analytics or BI spaces, don't over-rotate on the data itself. The workflow is the component. You can have the best model in the world, but it's just another spreadsheet sitting on a desk until you make it actionable. And that's how we use the RevUp capabilities, was to create a workflow to be able to hold ourselves accountable to see, well, are we executing against this? If so, what's working, what's not? If it's not working, learn from it, and to create that feedback cycle. So that is the critical piece, is you have to have a feedback cycle for a feedback loop for any data and analytics capability.
And I hope our audiences really learned something. And a lot of the notes that I took during this podcast is about processes and workflows. And I love what Barry shared about the cultural impact too, the time savings, the stress savings. and consolidating workflows and not only having the return, but not getting caught up in the data. And I love that you shared that, Barry. I would encourage our audience to reach out to Dun & Bradstreet. They're doing some amazing work in the industry. Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it. Great discussion.
Cheers, gang. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Barry.